Hi, my name is Ellen Rubin, and I'm going to show you today how to assemble blanket squares professionally. You can go from taking blanket squares that look like this and put it together so that it looks professionally put together and looks like this. Here we go. So here are some squares that I have made that are going to be part of a blanket. They're all done in garter stitch. I have left a tail here that I will be utilizing to actually seam these blocks together. The very first step that I like to do is weave in the extra tail. I like to use a blunt tip tapestry needle, and this tapestry needle has a curvature to it. I find it easier to work with this type of needle. So I'm going to first weave in the yarn that I will not be using for seaming. So if I am seaming these two blocks together, I don't need to use two tails. I like to leave a tail when I initially make it so that I don't have to start a new piece of yarn, and it makes it nice and easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is weave in the tail in the gray block here on the right. And I like to go underneath each of the V's that are here on the edge in an S sort of fashion. So I will go underneath here. And then under here. And I go back and forth across. I really don't have to go too far because it's already been secured over here. And then I will clip the tail here and then utilize this tail to put the block together. Now, when I'm putting the blocks together, the other essential tool that I need are locking stitch markers. I prefer the colorful kind, but any kind will work. They're preferable to safety pins because the coiled edge could catch on your work here, and you don't want that. So I'm going to demonstrate first how to pin your piece of work together nicely so that it makes it easier for when you are doing the mattress stitch when you're going to be putting these together. Now, one other thing that I'm going to say before I get going a little bit further is that I also like to lay out the work that I am making and pin it all at once so I have an idea about how the layout is going to be. In this piece here, I have the squares perpendicular to one another with the direction in which it was knitted. And I'm doing all the pinning ahead of time so that it'll make it easier for me. Now, because there are so many blocks, what I'm going to be doing is working in strips across, like I have done here in this center strip here. I first work in this direction, like this, and then I'll be seaming the long edge of the strip. So I'm going to do each of the individual blocks one at a time, and then do a long strip across, as you can see. So getting back to this over here, to pin it together, and I'm not going to do this one perpendicular to one another. I'm going to actually put them beside one another so you can see how that is done. I'm going to first pin the corners. And then I'm going to work my way across, making sure that there is no, that they are evenly spaced across here and that there's no extra fabric. Now, if say you're making a blanket, and a lot of different people have made blanket squares, and some of them are not exactly the same exact size, you can ease in the extra amount of fabric, and that can be a little bit tricky to do, but we're not going to be covering that necessarily today. So here, I have now pinned together these pieces, and I'm going to take my tapestry needle again. The very first thing I like to do is to secure the base of this square to the other square. I do it in this fashion. This is pre-mattress stitch. I take out the pin, and I'm going to find the very bottom corner of this piece of work here. I'm going to go underneath very carefully into the corner here. Then I'm going to go back into the same spot that I originated and go into that corner. I'm going to repeat that step, come from behind my work and go into the exact same spot as where I just started, and then do it one more time. This appears to be a figure 8 if you look on the side of this piece of work. I can now tighten this, and now I'm going to begin mattress stitch. Mattress stitch involves keeping the needle above your work the entire time. I'm going to take the needle, come from underneath, and go back into the exact same spot as previous. And I like to consider it's about 2 bars. I'm going to follow and go at the very, very edge of the work and seam it upwards in this sort of fashion. I'm going to go back into the same spot as I did. Here, I'm going to enter in the same spot. So I am just switching back from going from the left square to the right square, left square to the right square, always keeping the needle above the work. Going to go back underneath here, go on the very edge here. And now that I've gotten a little bit done, I'm going to hold my thumb here and tighten this work. And you can see that it joins together really nicely. I'm going to open up my work so I can see where the yarn came out from the previous stitch. So now that since the yarn is coming out here on this side, I'm going to come from this side over here and take the needle like this. My apologies, let me redo this. Now I'm going to come back over here to the other side. And you keep going back and forth in this fashion where I will stop, I will tighten the piece of work, then I open this up so I can see where the last stitch was. I take out my locking stitch marker. The yarn is coming out over here. Now I find that the spot where it came out on this side, and I'm going to come up over here, and I go back and forth and back and forth. It really makes a very nice seam here, and it does make it such that you have a right side and a wrong side to your work. This would be the right side, this would be the wrong side. And this is really just a fabulous way to put together your blankets so that they look professionally well made. I'm going to go all the way up to the top here, and then I'm going to show you what I do at the very end of this piece. Actually, what I think I'm going to do now is pretend that we're all the way at the end. I'm going to take this needle, bring it over to the other side. And then to secure it, I like to go back and forth in an S-shaped fashion by going in direction one way this way, and then the other direction this way. So I'm going in an S shape to secure this block together. After I've completed it, I just snip this piece of yarn here, and then you can see that it really makes a nice finishing edge here on your work. And that's really all there is to finishing with the mattress stitch. I'm going to be demonstrating the 3-needle bind off now. This is something that you might use with blanket squares where you have an equal number of stitches. A lot of times this is also used for shoulder seams. So I'm going to demonstrate that now. You're going to have your right side facing the side that would be external to your body or the blanket, touching one another. So you're going to have the right sides together on your work here. And now we're going to do the 3-needle bind off. The 3-needle bind off is exactly as it sounds. You're going to need 3 needles. And what I do is line them up one behind the other. I insert the needle into the front stitch here first, and then into the back stitch here. Then you are going to wrap the yarn around, pull it through, and then drop that stitch off of your needle. Then you're going to work the next stitch and knit through both of those stitches, wrap it around and pull through. And like you would typically do with a normal bind off, you are now going to lift one stitch over the other. I'm going to take this stitch, lift it over this stitch here, and off. Now I'm going to repeat this step all the way across. Insert the needle in the front here, insert the needle into this stitch in the back here, wrap it around, pull through, and then off. Then I lift the first stitch over and off. I'm going to do that again, into the front, into the back, wrap it around, pull through, drop this stitch off. Now lift one over the other, and I'm going to continue all the way across. Insert the needle in here. First I need to fix this stitch. Oops. Insert the needle in the front here, wrap it around, pull it through, now I have another stitch done. And then I continue across, going into each of the stitches on both of the needles. Drop it off, lift one over the other, and voila. You're going to go all the way across these stitches until you're left with just one stitch on this needle here. And when you've done that, then you cut the yarn and draw it through. And what's going to happen is these stitches will be all put together like this, and there will be a seam on the inside. This differs from the Kitchener stitch, in which you have no seams. Next, I'm going to be demonstrating the Kitchener stitch with this piece right here. All right, stay tuned. Now I'm going to demonstrate the Kitchener stitch. A lot of people tend to find this to be tedious or hard, but it really isn't all that hard if you consider my little note here. You're going to start with a setup stitch, and then you're going to repeat these steps over and over again. Now, why would you want to do the Kitchener stitch? The Kitchener stitch is found most commonly on the tips of toes, but there's other times that you might want to do some invisible grafting, and that's what this is exactly. There will be no seam. And actually, it's named after Lord Kitchener, I believe. He was in the military, and it was military men were having problems with their toes because of the chafing near the tips of their toes. So this was invented or done to prevent that. So what you're going to do is you need to have the same number of stitches, and you are going to have to lay them up against one another in this position. And with this time, you're going to be having the wrong sides together. The first step will be to take your yarn tail here, and you have to do the setup stitch, which I mentioned here first. And that setup stitch is just very simply, you're going to go into the front of your needle, and then I wrote you have to purl on, so you're going to do a purl stitch, keep the stitch, you're going to insert the needle purlwise, I mean, and then you are going to pull it through but not drop it off the needle. Then in the back needle, which is the purple stitches here, you're going to go in the back here, you're going to knit this, insert the needle knitwise and leave it on. Now you're going to be doing the actual Kitchener stitch and not going back to the setup stitch here. And you're going to be going back and forth between the front stitches and the back stitches until you're left with just all the stitches will be done, and then you just have to weave the needle through the remainder. Okay, front, knit off. So you're going to insert the needle knitwise and take it off of the needle here. Now I'm going to go into the second stitch here, insert it purlwise and leave it on the needle. Next, I'm going to go to the back needle, insert the needle in purlwise and take that stitch off. Now you want to be very careful not to have this piece of yarn here go over your needle. You want to make sure it stays to the side and underneath these needle tips so it doesn't get caught. So this one comes off, and then the next stitch is going into the back here, knitwise, and leave it on. Now, one very important note is try not to get interrupted, because that'll get you off. And if you're going to be interrupted or stop, always stop at the same spot. So know that you have just finished with, say, working with the back stitches, so that when you pick it up, you're back in just doing the front. So now that I know that I'm in the front, I'm gonna insert the needle knitwise, take it off, then I insert this purlwise, leave it on. Going to go to the back, insert it purlwise, take it off, then I'm going to insert the needle knitwise and keep it on. Go back to the front, knitwise off, purlwise on, go to the back, purlwise off, and then knitwise on. Now I can show you this at this point, and I'm gradually tugging this as well to even up what I'm working on here. The reason why I like how I made this short thing here is you can say it goes K, P, P, K, and it just helped me remember when I had to do this a lot. If you look very carefully, you can start to see that here the stitches are joined, but there is actually no seam. It's invisible. There is no bump in the back, and it's as if you were actually knitting, which is really what you're doing and joining two pieces together. So this is another way you could potentially put together a blanket, but my favorite by far is the mattress stitch. So I'm going to do a little bit more and just show you what happens. So I stopped at the back here, going to go to the front, knitwise off, purlwise, keep it on. Now I'm going to go to the back, purlwise off, then knitwise, keep it on. You have to be very careful not to drop any of these stitches by accident, which is very easy to happen. And I'm tugging this a little bit to try to get the tension nice and even here. Knitwise off, purlwise on, now I'm going to go here, purlwise off, and then knitwise on. I'll show you a little bit more of the work now. And it really actually works amazingly well. And so this is another way to do it. So take care. Thank you so much for tuning in, and knit on, everybody. Bye-bye.